Good morning, my dear pupils. How are you today? So, I hope you all are doing well. And welcome to history class. We continue with the Unit 7 Renaissance and Reformation next. And we continue, of course, talking about the Renaissance art. And today we're going to focus on the Cinquecento paintings. Next. This slide, I guess you can remember this slide, is talking about the general characteristics for the Renaissance art that will also serve for both the Quattrocento and here also in this case the Cinquecento, that's 16th century pictures, but also for the sculptures we studied in another chapter, yes? So they are looking for the ideal beauty. The ideal beauty that, as you can remember, it's based not in the inspiration, not in anything else, but in the mathematical proportions, in the golden ratio, yes, and the anthropocentrism. Anthropocentrism. The human being is the center, the most important. So you're going to see that they are going to prefer representing the human body in the pictures. And exactly like the Greeks and the Romans did, they are going to represent the human being in showing the most beautiful, so showing the entire body, so the nude figures, yes, so they recover the Roman and Greek standards of beauty and all the ideas in architecture, in cave painting. We've got no remainings about Greek paintings, but they recover or they adopt the idea of the Greeks and the Romans had for the art, and they assume it and they reproduce it in their own particular way. Next, about the Cinquecento paintings. We're going to study in this unit people that you most probably have heard about them. Leonardo da Vinci, yeah, the great Leonardo. Yes, we will see one of his most important characteristics, the sfumato. Sfumato is in Italian, yes, and that it means that the contours of the figures are blurred. Yes, we're also going to study Raffaello and Michelangelo. Next. Well, here you see a design in the left side from a portrait of Leonardo. In the middle we've got Raffaello Sanzio, and in the right side, yes, older than Raffaello, is Michelangelo. He was said that his personality was quite rude and not very nice, but you will hear. I will explain this to you. Next. Here we start with Leonardo da Vinci. Yes, a genius, yes. He was a super curious man. He investigated about everything that could be investigated. He made a lot of experiments. He studied everything. Next. You remember when I told you that the artists in the Renaissance, they to make a perfect body representation, they dissect corpses to study the bones, the intersection of the bones, the muscles. You see here in this draw how every muscle is represented in its place. That's not so that's a scientific way to represent the human body, based in the study of anatomy, based of course in the golden ratio, in a mathematical study, and as a result of their Studies in anatomy and in mathematics and geometry, the study of the proportion, the result is the beauty, the proportion between the parts and the parts with the entire whole of the body. Next. Here you can see his comments in the drawings he made while studying the shape of the bones, the shape of the muscles, and where are they located in the body. So a scientific anatomy study. Next. He made a lot of inventions, a lot of devices for incredible things. He also invented, not only this, were many machines to make the human fly. Okay, he did not achieve this, but he made a lot of inventions. Yes, next. Here we can see that he was paid by the Duke of Milan to create weapons. This one is to throw arrows very quickly and in a massive way. So he was paid by designing weapons for the family's forts in Milan. That was one of the jobs he had. Next. And here, I guess you already know this picture. Yes, this is one of the most important pictures in the world. Yes, that's the Gioconda or Mona Lisa. Why? Why is this picture so important? Yes, that's a portrait, but only a portrait? No, my dears, that's not only a portrait of a lady. This is a lady, of course, but here we can see many aspects to analyze. I'm not going to get very deeper on them, but I want to mention them to you. So, first, you know that the people in the Renaissance, they are under the influence of the Greek philosophers, yes? One of these philosophers is Plato. So they try to make a summary of the opposites. And that's why Leonardo here achieves. You see, this lady is not very masculine, it's not very feminine. This lady is neither smiling, but she's not sad. So she's in the right middle of every emotions, the perfect balance of all the emotions, of all the opposites. That's why he kept, Leonardo kept this picture with him during his entire life, and he traveled with this picture with him. Also, you can see the gesture, the serene gesture, yes? You can see how he imitates perfectly the human body. So, the perfection in the shapes, so it's a perfect representation of the proportions and the size and the muscles of a human body. And also in the background, that's what we are named sfumato, and also in the shadows, you see the background, you see this gray and blurred color. Leonardo discovered something while looking or while representing the landscapes. He managed to know that the farther away an object is, the more blurred and gray it appears. Yes, so you see at the bottom the shapes are not very sharp, are not very clear, are blurred. Yes, our eyes cannot distinguish perfectly what is located at the bottom. Yes, our eyes are not so sharp. yes, to represent everything super clear. He blurred the elements that are at the bottom. Because Leonardo investigated about the properties of the air, investigated about the density of the air, and obviously the air is not completely transparent. Yes, it means that the elements that are located at the bottom of a picture must be blurred, sfumato, difuminato. Yes? And also, that's at the bottom, yes? But also, next, if we compare La Gioconda with, you remember, the Venus, the birth of Venus, painted by Sandro Botticelli, you see the difference between this Mona Lisa in the Cinquecento and the Venus from Botticelli in the Quattrocento. Leonardo is not painting the contour of the face with a line and then painting with the colors inside. No, that's the esfumato, difuminato, blurred. Yes, you see, in the echo of the mouth, there's a blurred colors in the eyes that makes the sensation of a not very clear expression. He does not draw, he paints. He used the colors to paint, to create these shadows. He's not making a draw in the contours like you can say that Botticelli did. That's a change from the Quattrocento to Cinquecento. Yes, the blur contours. That's the sfumato, difuminato, blurred contours. Yes, next. Here you can see the picture in its original space in the Louvre Museum. And you can say that's not a very big picture. Next. Okay, here we see a very important painting from Leonardo. Yes, the Last Supper. That's a religious scene. In the center, we've got Jesus Christ in the Last Supper. Well, first I want you to focus in the architecture. Yes, here he uses the linear perspective, the diagonals created in the ceiling, yes, make our eyes to focus in the middle point. The middle point in the center, Jesus. But if you compare with the representations in the Middle Ages, he's in the center, but he is not bigger than the others. The size maintains the real size. Yes. So okay, but anyway, also the lines in the roof. Flat roof with these squares digged in the roof. Yes, the covered ceiling. Yes, flat ceiling, flat covered ceiling. Yes. And also the windows at the bottom. It creates a sense of deepness. Yes, he's creating a fake space in a flat surface. You remember a trempe l'huile, a trap for the eyes. Yes? Good. Then, next. You see how he tries to represent a space that actually does not exist in a flat surface. The picture was created in a refectorium. The refectorium is in a monastery. Okay, no, that's not a monastery, that's a convent for nuns. Yes, it's the place where the nuns meet to eat all together. Yes, the nuns were having dinner, and then that's the last dinner. So it matches very good the function with the representation of the picture. Yes, so we see the trempe l'huile, we see the linear perspective, the recreation of a space that actually does not exist in a flat surface. Yes, next. You see here the space, the refectory. And the moment that Leonardo chooses to represent is when Jesus Christ says, one of you is going to betray me tonight. Well, next. And then Leonardo, what he shows is the emotional reactions of the 12 friends of Jesus Christ. Is just like throwing a stone in the middle of a lake, and then the result is the creation of these waves that move from the center to outside. So here, Leonardo was very interested in the study of the movement of the water, and that's what he represents here, the emotional reactions of his friends when he announced that one of them is going to betray him, and as a result he was going to be die. Yeah, so very significant with a very strong emotional meaning moment. Yes, and if you could see the faces, every face is different. Every one of them is showing a different emotion, a different gesture, a different position. So that's also a study of the human emotions. Next. Okay, Raffaello, the divine. So here we see a portrait of him. Raffaello was very young, yes. He represents the virgins with a very elegant grace. He represents the simplicity. Yes, a concept of an ideal beauty, of course, based in the mathematics. Next, here you see La Madonna del Prato. You see again in the landscape how he blurs the bottom, or how the elements that are farther away are almost gray and very blurred. Yes, he's not using the linear perspective to create the sensation of deepness. He created the sensation of deepness by painting the air. Yes, that was what Leonardo did. Painting the air, making the elements at the bottom became or being with this gray color. That's how he represents the distance. Yes, and about the Virgin and Jesus and his cousin. Yes, San Juan. So he represents the grace, the serenity, the harmony, and he loves representing the red and the blue colors. Yes, but the serene beauty and the grace of the figures he represents. It seems the pictures are effortless, but actually not. The composition, he worked a lot about the composition, and he studied a lot the proportions, the shapes, so there's a very deep study before painting this that looks very simple but not. Behind this, there's a mathematical proportion, a triangular shape in the composition, the use of the colors to create the balance and the perfect draw and a very balanced emotions. Next. Here, that's a portrait with an important and a very deep emotions we can feel through the eyes of the lady. Yes, and observe the perfect representation of the stuff and the silks. Well, he represents the clothes with an incredible perfection. Yes, and also you see the shadows in the face to create the volume. His pictures are not vised in lines. He's not painting the contours to create the face. He's using the shadows, and everything is very soft, very delicate. It seems since he was young and he was a very nice personality, he tried to figure out it was for him painting was something effortless, but there's a mathematical and anatomy and a study of the proportions behind this. But he's the painter of the grace, the painter of the softness, and all their paintings are very delicate and inspired a balanced emotion, a quiet emotions. Yes. Next. The School of Athens, also from our so beloved Raffaello. These are located in the Vatican, yes? Well, first, what do we see? Classical elements, elements belonging to the ancient Rome and Greece. All the architecture we see, the sculptures, the semicircular arches that generate this vault with the decoration of these shapes digged in the ceiling, this coffered vault. Yes, you see, that's completely Renaissance, when the Renaissance artists copied the ancient Greek and Roman architects. Yes? The linear perspective with all these diagonal lines making our eyes get the center, focus on the center and creating this sense of deepness. Yes? And what else? Also observe the ceiling, these squares, the ceiling, the floor, sorry, the floor with these squares, with this grid. Yes, you remember the checkered floor with these lines pointing to the center, creating the sensation of deepness. That is what we study for the architecture, also serves to explain the architecture in all the paintings in the Renaissance, both in the Quattrocento and here in the Cinquecento also. Yes? But the School of Athens. Next. Here we see that our Raphael, he represents the most important Greek philosophers. And in the center, the most famous, yes, we've got Plato and Aristoteles. Next. Here also we've got Heraclito, but the most important, or a joke he made, is painting the face of Michelangelo in the representation of a Greek philosopher. Next. Here we see also the different philosophers. Each of them are represented with the perfect anatomy, with the perfect size, the proportions. And every face has a different gesture, explaining with the gestures, explaining with the faces, and explaining with the things that every philosopher carries. Their thinking or their ideas or the matter that they were interested in. Next. Here we see Pythagoras, yes, so important in mathematics and proportions. You see, they took from Pythagoras the idea of the square and the circle as the perfect shapes, yes, and many other ideas also about mathematics. Next. What we've got here? The artists, you remember, they were no more artisans. They were well-known people. They not only sing with their names their pieces of art, but here we see that Raffaello includes his face in the picture. Yes, he represents himself. That's a way to say how important the artists were in this moment. Yes, indeed, in the Renaissance is the moment where, for the very first time, appear books explaining the life, the biography of the artist. So even when they were alive, they were well-known people, very famous people. That's why the popes asked him, Raffaello, also, we'll see later, Michelangelo, the popes asked them to go to the Vatican, to go to Rome and to paint for them, to decorate the Vatican. And that's what this Gianca Raffaello is doing here. Next. Wow, Il Divino Michelangelo. Now we're going to study or to see something about Michelangelo. Michelangelo the Divine. Wow. Michelangelo was not only an architect, do you remember? He designed the dome for the St. Peter Cathedral in Rome, but he also was a sculptor. He painted, he also composed poetry. He was super good, extraordinary good in everything he did. He always made the best. Yes. Well, now if we focus on in his role as painter, we must talk about the next Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. Yes. The Pope asked Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of a chapel that already exists, yes, and was decorated in the Quattrocento, but the Pope entrusted him to paint the ceiling, yes, with a lot of figures, with the history of the Bible in the Antiguo Testamento, yes. So, actually, I must say that Michelangelo, he preferred making sculptures than painting, but he accepted this task. He did not want it, but he had to accept. He could not refuse making this work for the Pope, of course. And it took him 13 years to cover the ceiling. Yes, 13 years. You can imagine, it's a ceiling. It was not comfortable painting this, laying in a scaffold, tumbado en un andamio. 13 years doing something he actually did not want to do. So it was a tremendous effort for him. Yes, he became very, very angry, but he did his best, and the result is actually incredible. Yes. Next. Here we can see some squeeze for the sailing. The studies of the muscles, the bones, the anatomy he did are just incredible. He's a master. There's no one like him. Yeah. Next. That's the vault. Here we're going to see that he creates a lot of bodies. So he's centered in the representation of the human being, anthropocentrism, yes? And he's also to create fake architectures, yes? A trempe l'huile. a trap for the eye. So we're going to see that he represents elements of architecture that are not that do not exist, are only paintings. Yes. So next, here maybe you see these angels or these small or young figures. That's not architecture. That's a fake architecture. Yes. Next. Yes, that's the creation of Adam. Yes. So if we see these his figures, we can see that all of them are in completely different positions. He represents hundreds of human body figures, but he does not repeat any movement, any position, neither does he repeat any face expression or any emotion. Every figure is completely different from the others. That's incredible. And every figure is showing a different emotion and a different movement. That's incredible. Next. Here we can see even or we can see that he loved representing the human body, a very muscled bodies, a very heavy or with a very prominent anatomy. Yes, very muscle, very big, not fat, but very big, with a very prominent muscles. Yes, doesn't matter if he represents a man or a woman. This strong anatomies is a characteristic of Michelangelo. Yes, a very strong women and men. Next. That's the Adam creation, very famous. Yes, I guess you have already seen this. Here the expression in the eyes, how God and Adam are connected when they look at themselves. God that it's floating, it's at about touching Adam's finger, making or at about the moment that he's going to be alive. Yes, next. Here the tail of God. You see the diagonal line. You see how accurate he represents the hand, the nails, all the muscles, all the figures, all the people, the angels surrounding God. Their anatomies, their expressions, their movements, the different ages that he represents, all of them are different. And how many bodies he represents, and the representation of the muscles in the knee, the bones are perfect size, perfect proportion, and well, incredible, detailed. Next. Here, Adam, the study of the anatomy, you see how accurate he represents all the muscles. Yes, the perfection in the representation of the human body. That's the perfection with all the shadows, with everything is perfect. Yes, and he also assumes the ancient traditions of representing the human body naked. Next. Here you see the faces, how detailed, how perfect they are. Even if they are painted in the ceiling, when someone is looking at the ceiling, one cannot see all these details. So he took care of all the details, even if the human eyes from the floor, from the ceiling, cannot see them, because they are in the ceiling, so there are some meters. Yes. Next. Here we see some prophets. Next. Also the feminine figures, you see, they are also, or they are represented with the strong anatomies. Yes, not very feminine. That's a characteristic from Michelangelo. So the muscles. Next. He does not represent twice the same gestures or the same figures. Every figure is different one from the others. And the architecture are a fake. That's also a drawing. Yes? Next. The diagonal lines, the movements, yes, all the gestures and the composition. He's a master in the composition. Next. You see the study of the anatomies, the perfect shapes, proportion, and mathematical proportion. So 13 years painting this, doing his best, even if he did not want to do this job because it was exhausting. Can you imagine 13 years? With a terrific pain in the neck, trying to paint this in the ceiling. Well, not comfortable at all. Next. Next. Okay, so here we see the final judgment, yes, in the same Cappella Sixtina in the Vatican. When, after 13 years, Michelangelo managed to finish painting the ceiling, the Pope said, "Okay, Michelangelo, you did it so perfect that now I want you to paint the wall in the front." So imagine how happy Michelangelo was. He was wishing to create the sculptures, and the Pope forced him to make pictures. That's why some people said that he was not very nice man. So it took him 4 years to finish the final judgment. You remember the final judgment? Next. Okay, this is not very clear. Next. You remember the final judgment? We studied this in the Romanesque sculptures in the tympanum in the churches, yes? Well, at the end of the time, there's going to be a judgment, and those that behave good go to the heaven, and those that behave bad go to the hell. And then Jesus Christ in the center of the composition, in the upper part, of course, he is with a gesture of punishment. Yes, but you see the muscles of Jesus Christ, the and study of the anatomy. Well, incredible, the anatomy of all the figures in general. Yes. So, but he looks quite so not very happy. He's about punishing. Yes. So in the right side of Jesus Christ, he represents all the people that will go to the heaven, and in the left side, all the people that it's going to be punished in the hell. Next. Here better with the colors, yes, the anatomy of Jesus Christ and the Virgin. Again, the complementary colors, the red and the blue. Next. Well, Michelangelo, that he was suffering so much, he makes a portrait of himself in this sand that tore off the skin. So in the face of the skin suffering, he represented there himself. Next. Better you can see here his face. Next. So you see the angels carrying the elements of Jesus Christ, torture, the cross. Yes. Next. the people that it's going to reach the heaven. But you see, again, he's a master in the composition. He's a master in the creation of the figures, of the human figure, in the study of the anatomy, all the expressions in these 100 figures. He does not repeat any movement, he does not repeat any gesture, he doesn't repeat any expression in the face, he does not repeat any face. So every figure is completely different from the others, it's completely original. Yes, and I guess you have noticed that the feminine figures, they look like men. Yes, because he loved representing these prominent muscles. He only ate at a bruised in these so strong bodies to make everyone understand that that's feminine figure. Next, you see here all the perfection in the composition, the different figures that are twist or creating diagonals, creating this sensation of deepness, one behind the other. Next, you see all the expression of the emotions in the face, the curiosity of this man in the right side, in the upper part. So next, you see how he represents the muscles. That's incredible. Next, you see all the anatomies, the movement, expressions, the anatomy. So these are the main features of, or the most important characteristics of Michelangelo. When we study their sculptures, we will see that their anatomy is very similar. And those that are going to the hell and the demons, yes, the anatomy of the demons. He does not repeat any movement or any gesture. Next. So, my dear pupils, I hope you liked this presentation, and yeah, see you or hear you next day. Then, bye bye, have a nice day.